following the media report on the University of Namibia that claimed that all students have to be vaccinated before moving into the hostel, the motion for today's debate reads as follows. This House supports the legalization of mandatory vaccinations at tertiary institutions. We hope to see a lively debate as our viewers, as two of the top schools go head to head today. For proposition, we have Chairman Mao Zedong High School, and for opposition, we have Delta Secondary School. I'll be calling forth our speaker from Team Proposition, George Biwango.
And even though the vaccines may have a minor side effects, it is better to be protected against the virus than to be at full risk of contracting the virus and potentially even dying. No one wants to die. We need doctors to help patients and to prevent patients from dying, which will, decrease the death rate and therefore increasing our country's economy. Mandatory requests at tertiary institutions will result in increase in number of vaccinated the vaccinated population, because tertiary institutions accommodate a large number of working population for the future, as companies both locally and internationally are in the process of requesting full vaccinations for employees and students, meaning to apply for an international scholarship, you will need to be vaccinated, since more countries want vaccinated people. To no lockdown and an effective face-to-face lessons, which will result to a higher academic performance of students, as they'll be able to concentrate better in class and have the opportunity to connect, problem solve, and network with other students from a wide range of backgrounds subsequently. Okay.
In the event of an adverse reaction to the vaccine, how would you be held accountable?
I'll answer that in my closing speech. Vaccination cards will be one of our most important and highly required documents when it comes to application for both internationally and locally. The rumors and alleged dangers of the vaccines that are being spread about the vaccines are false and haven't been proven by the Ministry of Health and Social Services, neither the World Health Organization.
Now we will call upon Team Opposition's first speaker and only speaker, Tatenda.
Panel, imagine that you were forced to do something to your body with no regard for your feelings. Imagine that your right to bodily integrity could be taken away on a whim and you could do nothing about it. This is the predicament that we find ourselves in proposition's world, and we strongly oppose this. Forcing students and workers to take this vaccine is inhumane, because it takes away people's right or their presumed ideological ideals. But it's a violation to our liberty in the democratic state. In the case of adverse reactions to the vaccine, how is the government held accountable? The prop team was not able to answer these questions.
Would you rather prefer Namibian citizens dying just because we have to listen to what the public has to say according to their rules in the Namibian constitution?
This is the harms we get from this side of the house, and we think that those are harms that are very relevant in today's debate. However, the benefits we get from this side of the house, they tell us that, listen, four things. Firstly, you get a safer environment, because assuming you get this vaccine, not only do you protect yourself as a student, but you also protect the next student and the lecturers. So the environment as a whole becomes a lot safer. And they explain to us the long run. In the end, what happens? We don't have a lockdown. We do away with the lockdown, and we get to engage with face-to-face schooling. And they explain to us why this is important, because you create an environment where students are able to engage and speak to each other. I think that's something that we need to concede to. Oxford are ensuring that we create an environment where teachers and lecturers are able to have a conducive learning environment. I lack that from the side of the house, hence why the debate was given to Team Opposition. Congratulations.
Congratulations, Chairman Mao Zedong. Following the tabling of a new bill in Parliament and the circulation of a video by Honourable Patience Masua, the motion for today reads as follows. This House supports the increment of the minimum rape sentence from 5 years to 10 years. And for Team Proposition, we have our first speaker here to deliver his opening speech.
Ladies and gentlemen, we're not going to be soft on a crime you do on a crime, ladies and gentlemen, because you do the crime, you pay the time, right? So, ladies and gentlemen, in today's debate, we as Team Proposition are basically proposing that there is an increment of these sentences because of the current situation, the status quo. So, ladies and gentlemen, what is the status quo? The status quo is that the government or the criminal justice system is failing to achieve justice for rape victims, to achieve justice for rape victims, and it's failing as an entire criminal justice system because it's not actually achieving what a criminal justice system is supposed to be achieving, which is deterrence, which is punishment, and which is rehabilitation, and I'll get more into that later on in my arguments, right? So, ladies and gentlemen, why is it necessary to then increase this minimum sentences from 5 years to 10 years, right? It is true, and it's only because of the status quo, right? We feel like the rape victims are not achieving the justice that they seek for, right? Rape victims are very depressed, ladies and gentlemen, because the current criminal justice system goes too soft on these rapists, right? They do not actually achieve the justice that they deserve or the justice that they want, right? We feel like also these rapists do not actually get a chance to change because the current or years that they get to go in jail isn't enough, right? They come out not a better person but a far worse person, right? To going to commit the crime all over again. So, ladies and gentlemen, we also have to consider the members of the community, right? If I've spoken before in terms of problems, ladies and gentlemen, we have to understand that the community suffers at large because the community then has to live with rapists that haven't been properly rehabilitated, ladies and gentlemen, and the community has to live with future rapists that do not actually really have deterrence, who are not actually afraid to commit the crime because of this minimum sentence, right?
So next up we have our Team Opposition.
We believe that more effective and proven measures such as prevention education should be used. We need to take the situation from the root. House at large. Of this, we think of the stigma within our community. We think about the way that rape or exposing family members of rape is seen as taboo, House at large. And this is only at a 5-year sentence. Imagine if it was increased to a 10-year, over a decade. Imagine the amount of stigma there would be. What victims would come forward, House at large?
With that said, I do believe that it's only fair for one team to win, and I deliberated it to be side proposition solely because they really showed us the pros and the cons to some extent. However, it was a really close debate. Thank you.
And congratulations to Team Proposition that won today's episode of Straight Talk Debate. Today we have two brilliant schools. For Team Proposition, we'll be having Combretum Trust, and for Team Opposition, we have St. George's College. The motion for today is, this House supports the Russian invasion of Ukraine. This news has been blowing up our phones and our notifications. And as poignant as it is, we do believe that it is important for high school learners to engage on these things because they are, after all, our future leaders and maybe even our future presidents, hence the nature of this debate. So, for Team Proposition, we have Aurora, who will be the speaker for today.
I would like to call for a moment of silence for all the lives lost through this tragedy. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Aurore Lonyome, and I'm the first speaker for today's team. Okay. Let's imagine you are standing and there's someone next to you, and that person keeps on poking you constantly while denying the visible act that they are posing. Ladies and gentlemen, let us please admire the patience that Russia had throughout this ongoing poking for 8 years now. It has been 8 years that this has been ongoing, and Russia has demonstrated incredible patience throughout this time. The USA has an objective, or the NATO together have an objective to go for their interests and disregard Russia's interest in the process. They lack integrity. Integrity is one of the problems we face today because the NATO, as well as the USA, as well as Ukraine, has constantly violated the agreements on the NATO non-expanding eastwards. They have constantly violated this agreement. They kept on lying to the Russians. They kept on attempting to pressurize them and to even blackmailing them into not letting this thing go. Draw from it. Yes, sir?
I wanted to ask, do you think that NATO has been breaking these rules for a certain cause? Because it's been proven that Russia has been expanding on their military bases for the attack that they've been planning on Ukraine. And NATO has said before the reason they've been expanding in Russia's forces is to destroy these on-land nuclear weapons and missions that Russia has been trying to get towards Ukraine.
Basically, you're actually proving my point, the point I said earlier, that USA and its allies are they're only expanding for their own benefits to obtain the nuclear weapons from Russia. What are the nuclear weapons doing to them? The nuclear weapons are in Russia and in Russian position, and they haven't done anything with them. There is no valid point as to why they would want to expand towards Russia by using Ukraine and jeopardizing Ukraine's safety.
Now we call upon our first and only speaker from Team Opposition to come.
If you think about this, if we just let Russia do this and the world doesn't stand with Ukraine, what kind of message does that put out? The fact that they can just go and take land with whatever they want. I'd also like to take a point at one of the first speakers. They said how Russia is just trying to protect the civilians. I think this is false, because Russia's civilians are currently living in the worst economic climate the world has seen in so long. They aren't helping their citizens at all. Russia is simply just turning the other eye because they want control on Ukraine. I would like to think if Russia was really protecting their citizens, they would focus less of what's going on in Ukraine and focus on the human rights violations in Russia themselves and what they are doing right now to help their civilians. This war is affecting so many other countries because look at the oil rates going up. It's a huge thing that many people are currently talking about, the fuel prices. Russia claims that they are doing all of this in the good sake of their people, in the good sake of Ukraine's people. But I don't think they actually mean it. They say it by that label to try and stay good. Russia has already broken the General Convention by refusing to cease fire and harming innocent civilians. I'd also like to point out the fact that NATO only started expanding in 2016, but Russia made an invasion attack in 2014. So they, by law, broke that agreement first.
And the deliberation are made. The debate unanimously goes to side opposition St. George's. Yes, thank you very much. It was a lovely debate, and good luck to all of you in your future rounds.
And congratulations, Team Opposition.
Independence itself is a large occasion, yes. We believe that it does deserve some sort of commemoration. We believe that it does deserve this high status. However, we don't believe that independence should value over other things, right? And the moment that we have an independence celebration that was dialed down to the level which it was, we believe that there should be less spending for occasions like this, right? We believe that the independence celebration by itself in a whole do not necessarily benefit people, even though they still use the exact same amount of money to fund this celebration, right? These government funds could have been utilized better. For instance, how we have Katutura Hospital in such a dilapidated condition in need of immediate assistance and funding, which is unable to get this funding because funds are rather given to things that deserve less funding. As Team Proposition, we're not saying that the Independence Day should be given $500,000 of funding. We just mean that the Independence Day celebration should have less funding than it normally does because this celebration was one of the smallest celebrations within a long time, right?
Now, ladies and gentlemen, it's of course time to tap into what Team Opposition has to say. Please help me welcome Crystal Mbiaki.
However, last year's budget was $1 million and our celebrations were held at the State House and only around 50 people or so were in attendance. So if 2.5 million is too much for you for around 1,000 people that were at this year's celebrations, then how would you justify the 1 million for only 50 people at our State House motion? A government budget is made to approach and address the needs and issues of a country. It is an annual financial statement where an itemized estimate of revenue expected and expenditure anticipated are listed for the current financial year. A budget is simply a financial plan, so it is of paramount importance that we understand that today's debate focuses solely on whether the 2.5 million budget was reasonable or not, and anything regarding what could have been done with the money rather falls out of the topic of confines and should therefore be considered irrelevant. However, if you consider that the national budget for the 2022/2023 financial year was $70.8 billion, then your perspective starts to shift a little, am I right? As a matter of fact, 2.5 million is only 0.004% of 70.8 billion. We, as a proud and independent nation, are only spending 0.004% of our national budget to commemorate the day that Namibia gained freedom from its oppressors. That is less than 1%.
Government officials. Where are the ordinary citizens? Where is the person who needs health facilities, health care, or education? Where is that person kept within this budget? How does this budget help the people? Because at the end of the day, we really don't know where the money went, right? With that, I'd like to round up with my adjudication.
Amazing. Congratulations, Team Preposition, Hagegengop High School. And we will be seeing you at the final. That is, of course, next week.
Right. In terms of actually manufacturing sector, right, we feel like the Namibian economy cannot even produce toothpicks. How do they then move to produce cars, right? How do they then move to produce phones, right? So that side proposition gives us a picture-perfect world where the country is then self-reliant. But we feel like even when a country is self-reliant, a country does not have all resources, and a country does not have all raw materials, and that's why imports come in. And a country cannot then directly decide to cut off imports, and even when they cut off imports, they do not become self-reliant, right? What then happens is that they cut out or they are isolated from the global economy, and I'll say that in my arguments, right? So the second thing that we characterize as side opposition is what is a self-reliant country like? We feel like a self-reliant country is a country that lives in a developed world, right? A country that has far-reaching trading networks with the global economy, right? A country that knows, the country that has both imports and exports under control, right? A country that can produce sufficiently for its people, right? And a country that is able to create employment at the end of the day, right? A country that can that is transitional in terms of industrial revolutions, right? A country that's in the fourth industrial revolution, unlike Namibia, right? Namibia isn't even in the fourth industrial revolution, and with that, we feel like Namibia is then unable to actually work on or produce its own goods, right? This causes diplomatic tension whereby Namibia cannot sit with other member states of SADC because Namibia has then decided to attack the member states of SADC directly, and they decided to attack the economies of these member states, right? And why
do you, as team opposition, not want a picture-perfect world? Do you want to live in a world where there is constant crime and constant gender abuse? We as team opposition US Team Proposition are telling you how we would help the country and to become a perfect country, because we all want to live in a perfect world.
In as much as Proposition was showing us the world that Namibia is trying to become one day, it was not enough for you to paint a utopia to the judge and tell us that this is how it's going to happen.
So, a well-deserved win there, but let's not forget that our newcomers made it to the finals. With that being said, we hope to see you guys again in our next season.